Hey, Pretty Girl Club, welcome back to the social climbing series. For those of you who are new to the Pretty Girl Club, thank you for subscribing. I want to talk about why some women stay at the bottom in terms of social status. Have you ever heard women use this talking point of, we're at the bottom of the hierarchy, I always feel left out, I always feel outshined and overlooked? This video is for people who are not as familiar with my social climbing and privilege stacking content. So, the number one reason why some women stay at the bottom in terms of social status is because of PTSD. So, if she grew up in an environment where she was always in survival mode, a lot of women, they actually never come out of that mindset as they get older. Have you ever met a woman where she is suspicious of everyone? She is hypervigilant. That's what they call it, is hypervigilance. It's like when you're automatically extremely paranoid. She's paranoid about isms. She feels like everybody around her is secretly against her. She feels like the people around her secretly have it out for her. So that is all the mindset of being in survival mode. So when you're in a survival mode, you can't be in a growth mindset because you're not focused on growth. You're not focused on leveling up and achieving social status. No, you're focused on how am I going to survive? So we see this happening to a lot of women when they go to jobs, like maybe a 9 to 5 job. Maybe they're trying out for a certain organization or opportunity. A lot of them are in survival mode. A good example of this is Normani. I feel like Normani, with the way she carries herself in the industry, it's almost as if she carries herself like she's just trying to survive in the industry in general. It's not that she's trying to grow in the industry or become the next Beyonce. It's more so like, okay, I just want to survive. I just want to make it. I just want to get the next brand deal. I just want to make it to the next performance. So I'm just using her as an example, but that's the difference between women who constantly feel like they're at the bottom versus the ones who are easily able to attain social status. It's because one of them is in survival mode. She's just trying to focus on securing a position in the first place. She's just trying to focus on not being at the bottom, whereas the exoticals, we are focused on more of a growth mindset. So if you think about like a PTSD mindset, they are in a state of fight or flight or freeze or fawn mode, like a lot of the content where they're pedestalizing certain groups of men or just pedestalizing men in general, being male centered and stuff like that. That's a trauma response. That's fawn. That is the fawn trauma response. So when your brain is prioritizing safety and survival, it's much harder to imagine long-term goals like building wealth or gaining social status, gaining followers, starting a business, knowing how to market yourself, gaining visibility. So I noticed that some women, they stay at the bottom because all of their goals, they're short-term thinkers, basically. They don't think things through. They're constantly focused on living day to day. So they're thinking in a short-term mindset. So their whole entire existence revolves around avoiding triggers. Oh, how can I stay away from colorist, texturist, and featurist? You know, their whole existence is revolving around how to reduce stress. Like, oh, how can I live a soft life or tap into my femininity? So on this channel, I talk about stress. There's a such thing as positive stress. Did you know that? That's actually a thing. It's called eustress. EU stress is how it's spelled. Isn't that funny? EU stress. It's the positive version of stress. So an example of good stress is like the stress of maintaining your fitness, or maybe you're training for a marathon. You are studying for an exam. You're trying to get your master's degree. So yes, it's technically stressful, but it's a good form of stress. But the women who are in survival mode, they're trying to avoid all forms of stress. So that includes avoiding the stress of leveling up. And that's why you hear some women kind of giving up before they even begin, because they're like, no, I don't want to do all that. I don't want to have to move to a new neighborhood. I don't want to have to go to school. I don't want to have to grow out my edges. I don't want to have to clear my skin. So they're trying to avoid stress because it's basically just a trauma response. So they're just focused on safety. They just want to survive day to day. Another thing too is women who have like this PTSD, they have a lot of PTSD from isms or from toxic mother, toxic father, toxic background, poverty trauma. There are so many different types of trauma that can come from your background. So that causes them to become way more distrustful of people in general. It's very difficult to be a team player. It's very difficult to work with people if you don't trust anyone. That's very difficult. I mean, how am I going to go and get my makeup done if I don't trust any makeup artist? How am I going to go get my hair done if I don't trust any hairstylists? How am I going to go get a personal trainer at the gym if I don't trust any of the trainers? Do you see that issue? Do you see the problem? Do you see how having too much distrust, it literally causes me to self-isolate? So that is what makes certain women bad at networking. So they're bad at networking. They tend to be bad at having like mentors or colleagues or people that they work alongside. They tend to be bad at joining communities. You know how they have all those clubs and organizations that can help you in your job? You know how they have like unions. They have like the Black Student Union if you're in college. People who struggle with PTSD, they're so hyper vigilant. They're always looking for a threat. They're always looking for something that could potentially threaten them. And so they're bad at networking. They're bad at making friends. They're bad at kind of becoming well-liked. And that also leads to women feeling like losers. They feel like they're not popular. Popularity is a form of social climbing. You had to be socially smart and have good social skills in order to become popular. In order to have that many people like you and want to be your friend, that means you have to have some pretty good social skills. But the women who have a whole bunch of PTSD that they haven't worked through, they're too distrustful. They're too scared of threats, and so that's why they kind of hesitate when it comes to interacting with other humans. Number 3 is emotional dysregulation. That is something else that causes certain women to feel like they're at the bottom. They're constantly having these intense emotions of anger or shame or anxiety. So they struggle with like all or nothing thinking. So for example, let's say she goes to an event and her leave out looks bad or something, or her hair's a little bit frizzy. There's a difference between, oh, my hair is frizzy versus the woman who starts spiraling. So emotionally dysregulated women, they have a problem with spiraling all the time. So because they're constantly spiraling about their hair, spiraling about their makeup, spiraling about their position at their job, or, if they're a music artist, spiraling when it comes to their music, that's a form of emotional dysregulation. So when your mind is constantly trying to solve all of these emotional problems, it blocks your creativity. And I've talked about creativity privilege on here. I've talked about how being creative, that's a source of power. Like, do you know how much creativity it takes for me to be a content creator? I had to come up with over 1,000 ideas in order to make 1,000 videos. So that's a lot of mental bandwidth. That means I have to really think, I have to really plan. But if someone's emotionally dysregulated, the only thing they want to plan for is how to become emotionally safe. So what you'll see these women, they struggle with burnout more so than the privileged women because, they're dysregulated. So they may have a burst of ambition, maybe like once a month they become ambitious, but then they collapse whenever they face resistance. So for example, these would be the women who maybe they start a YouTube channel, then they quit because they got a negative comment. Or, maybe they're growing on YouTube, but then they stop because they got doxxed. So that's an example of emotional dysregulation stopping you from your level up journey. And by the way, a part of why some women want to dysregulate you is because they're hoping that you will become so anxious and scared that you'll stop doing what you're doing. This is why sometimes you have like women at your job that try to send emails about you. It's not about the fact that you made an error. They're sending an email because they want you to be emotionally dysregulated. Maybe they're trying to scare you out of the job. They're trying to scare you out of a promotion. Or they just want you to be miserable like them. They're hoping that it will stop your level up journey because they understand how much of a hindrance it is to be dysregulated. So that's why I say that a part of social climbing has to do with regulating your emotions. There are some women who are very bad at managing their emotions. They're very bad with emotional dysregulation. That's why you see them constantly kind of self-destructing. Have you ever met somebody where she's always self-destructing? Everywhere she goes, there's something bad happening. She gets fired from every single job. She's had really, really toxic relationships, one after the other. Maybe you have a certain family member who's always falling out with all the other family members. Maybe you have a friend where she's constantly beefing with everybody. She's beefing with you. She's beefing with her other friends. That's an example of an emotionally dysregulated person. Because remember, constant emotional dysregulation, that leads to self-destruction. Because think of how irrational you can become when you're dysregulated. When people are angry, they do stuff out of anger sometimes. They say stuff that they don't mean, or they kind of lash out. They start to destroy their own opportunities, all because they became emotionally dysregulated. You even see some people going to jail because they assaulted someone. Have you ever been around a woman where she was so mad at you for no reason, she wanted to randomly fight you? Well, that's an example of an emotionally dysregulated woman. So your presence, your light, your confidence, your beauty, your femininity emotionally dysregulated her to the point where now she is willing to commit an act of violence just so she can calm herself down. And that's why certain women stay at the bottom. It's because they're too busy trying to figure out a coping mechanism for their dysregulation. They're not thinking about actually leveling up. They're not thinking about starting a business. They don't have time to create a website and print out business cards or have a QR code or something like that. They're not even thinking about that because they're trying to figure out how to cope with what they're feeling inside. So that's why you see some women get exhausted. Have you ever tried to lose weight with a friend and then your friend gives up after like 2 days? Well, that's an example. She has some form of emotional dysregulation when it comes to weight loss. She has a form of emotional dysregulation when it comes to diet or when it comes to exercise or discipline. So that's why she gets burnt out so easily. A burnt out person, whenever they're experiencing burnout, they're experiencing emotional dysregulation. That's you can't have one without the other. Another thing too is women who have PTSD, whether it's from isms, their family background, maybe negative experiences that happen to them, it actually destroys their self-concept. So traumatic experiences, that damages your self-worth. I mean, it does. If you don't work through it, it can damage your self-worth. Like if you have a lot of bad experiences with men or with white people or with black people or living in a certain neighborhood, all of that, it can cause you to create limiting beliefs like, I can only succeed if I'm around other people who look like me. Oh, if I'm in a room full of black people, they're all going to be colorist. Okay, those are examples of limiting beliefs. So you may be cutting yourself off to an opportunity. The first person that gave me my very first official job as an accountant was a black man. So if I would have had a mindset of, oh, he's black, so he must be dusty, I'm not going to work there. If I would have had that mindset, I would have never received my first accounting job at a major company that had over 30,000 employees working at it, a very prestigious company. I would have never received that opportunity if I would have had an internal ceiling or a limited belief about blackness. So I think that part of the reason why I've been able to social climb is because even if I experience traumas from, let's say, the black community, for example, I don't allow those traumas to define me. I work through the traumas as time goes on. And by the way, it's okay to be working through things. It's okay. Even if you're always working through things, you really should be working through things all the time. Some people call it shadow work. Some people call it getting deliverance. Some people call it overcoming. So if you have too much trauma that you haven't worked through, it can actually limit your own opportunities because you can't see past your own bad experiences. And it's funny because when I talk about like decentering men, a lot of people think that I'm talking about, oh, you can never date again, or you can never talk to a man, or you have to be celibate for life. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is no longer prioritizing them so that you can maintain your emotional health. A lot of emotional trauma comes from putting other people on a pedestal. You put those black men's opinions of you on a pedestal. So that's why you were so traumatized when he was colorist when you were 15. That's why you still remember it 15 years later. It's because you put his opinion on a pedestal. So that's why people who have PTSD, it damages their self-concept. Because, they basically, whenever they're trying to overcome it, they kind of self-sabotage in a way. And they might self-sabotage their career advancement, building their brand, their financial growth, all because it feels unsafe. So that's why sometimes you get these people where they say, I don't want to move out of the black neighborhood. I don't want to live around all those white people, or I don't want to live around all those black people. So it feels unsafe. Change feels unsafe to them. So that's where you get these people who are closed-minded. Closed-minded people come from traumatic backgrounds. The PTSD is causing the closed-mindedness. Have you ever noticed that women who are privileged, we kind of have this carefree nature about ourselves? We're naturally very resilient. Have you ever been called carefree? Have you ever been called free-spirited? That is proof that you have overcome your PTSD, or that you are actively working through it to the point where you get results. Because women who are deeply traumatized, they can't be carefree. It feels like they have the weight of the world on their shoulders because they have all of these looping memories, negative memories, kind of replaying in their head every single day. So for example, let's say you're dark skinned and you want to put on red lipstick, and then you look in the mirror to put on the lipstick, and then a thought pops up in your head, oh, you can't wear red lipstick, you're too dark, you're too black. That's an example of a negative memory replaying. So whenever you're trying to overcome that PTSD, whenever you're trying to break out of your shell or kind of push your limits, that limiting belief comes back up because you internalized that negative experience. And that's also why I feel like women who have severe PTSD cannot have fluid identities. They can't truly be fluid because in order to have a fluid identity, you have to be carefree. Being carefree means you don't care what people think. So you don't care if people call you a token. You don't care if people call you a wannabe. You don't care if people say you're a bleacher. You don't care if people say you're wearing weave or your hair must be fake. It must be relaxed. Oh, you're just trying to fit in. You wish you were white. You don't really care about that because the whole premise of being carefree means you just do what you want. You do whatever the fuck you want. But another thing too is women who feel like they're at the bottom, oftentimes the PTSD, what it does is it causes intrusive thoughts. It actually makes it difficult for them to concentrate because they're being flooded with all these insecurities all the time. And then sometimes women even have memory issues. And so, they have a harder time planning. They have a harder time staying consistent. They have a harder time following through on complex goals. Every goal that you set is not necessarily an easy goal. There are some goals that take years to achieve. There are some goals that are a little bit more complex. But because her brain power is being used up with trying to process all of these negative emotions, or, because she doesn't have control over her own thoughts, that's what makes those women feel like it's almost like overwhelming to them. Like telling them about growth and staying in these upscale places, that they feel out of place. Why do they feel out of place when they go into an upscale area? Why do they feel out of place in an all black setting, in an all white setting? Well, it's because of the PTSD attached to those types of people. So you can avoid it. You can avoid it, but I don't recommend that. I don't think avoidance, that's not really a solution. Some of the things that I've implemented to overcome like traumatic past experiences is practicing grounding. So like breathing in and out, journaling, scanning my body. Like, okay, how do I feel in my body right now? When I'm in a room full of black people, when I'm in a room full of white people, when I am in a small town, when I'm in a large town, how do I feel in my body? And then also I try to affirm myself too. Like I will tell myself, I actually will put my hand over my heart or I will kind of hug myself. And then I will tell myself I'm safe. Like I'm safe. I'm okay. It's okay, nervous system. You don't have to panic. Have you ever had some sort of panic or anxiety attack when you're going on a date or when you're dating someone, or maybe you have a meeting at work and you're not sure if they like are writing you up or something? Those are the types of moments where I remind myself I'm safe. It's okay. Oh, and another thing I forgot to say too is what you can do is you can grow and use your own growth as a form of healing. So I like to do that all the time. I remind myself, look how far I've come. So instead of, oh, I need to lose 50 pounds immediately, it's, wait a minute, look how far I've come. I already lost 5 pounds just in 1 month. Look how much I already achieved. I already graduated from college. That's an achievement in and of itself. I may have been written up at work once, but look at all of the things that I did right. And by the way, for those of you who follow me, you do know that I don't recommend staying in a 9-to-5 for the rest of your life. I try to encourage you guys to become entrepreneurs, invest, sell things, I don't know, create your own business, get some NVIDIA. I mean, I try to tell you guys to not have just one stream of income, because having multiple streams of validation, that's another way that you can gradually heal yourself from all these past traumas. So, for example, even though I've experienced a lot of traumas in the Black community, for example, I also have a whole bunch of very validating experiences that I had in the Black community. So, one example is like getting my first accounting job. Another example is when I was at my HBCU, yes, I may have dealt with vicious envy and jealousy, but I also had a huge pedestal. I got so many opportunities. I was in dozens of different clubs. I was very, very visible. I had a lot of fun when it came to things like dating and relationships and friendships. You know, I met a lot of amazing people. Actually, I'm still friends with quite a few of the people from when I was younger. So that's another form of healing, so that you no longer feel like you're at the bottom. It's building those streams of micro validation. And for the people who are like, oh, well, nobody wants to be my friend, I understand if you're going through a transition period and you don't have friends. Like, that's happened to me before, where maybe I'm moving to a new city, or maybe I had toxic friends. You know, I chose wrong. You know how they say choose better? Well, that applies when it comes to friends. So maybe I chose wrong and then I cut off my whole circle and then I get a new circle or something. So I've had instances like that, but you've never heard me say on this channel to never have friends ever for the rest of your life. No, I want you to have an emotional support system. In fact, that's what this community is. By the way, if you want to join the Patreon or the members page, you'll get access to the Discord, and then you can make friends in there. Because online friends, that still counts. It may not be the same as in person, but it's still a step in the right direction, because at least you're not totally isolated. You still have a safe space where you can open up. You know, you can kind of get people, you can bounce ideas off of people. So friendships, that's definitely a form of micro validation, because having true friends, that's a form of emotional support. And this is also why I talk about what your friendship type is. So for some of you guys, like, different people have different emotional needs when it comes to friendships. Some women want a friend that they can vent to. Other women, they want someone to do things with. That's like me. I want someone that explores the world with me, someone that's like, you know, she's multicultural. She likes going out and about. Then there are other women who they want a lot of emotional intimacy in their friendship. So they want like a best friend. You know, they believe in the concept of, this is my best friend. And, you know, this is just my regular friend. And this is my friend group. And this is my clique. So everybody has their own little standards for what they want in a friendship. And a part of why some women constantly manifest toxic friendships is because they haven't discovered what their friendship type is, and they also don't know what their hater archetype is. So I don't try to make friends with my hater archetype. I don't prioritize those women in my friendships. So whatever your hater archetype is, go for the opposite of that in terms of friendships. So if your hater archetype is overweight white women, then become friends with skinny Black women. Go for the opposite, and you'll probably have a better experience. Another thing I did to kind of overcome this feeling of being stuck is like setting up my goals, kind of breaking them down into micro goals. So instead of, oh, I need to lose 50 pounds ASAP, I could break it down into, let me go on the stair stepper for 15 minutes today. So I'm setting a daily goal. I haven't moved up yet to monthly and, you know, weekly and all that, yearly. No, what is my goal for today? What do I want to achieve by the end of today? Get my 10,000 steps. I would like to eat 75 grams of protein today. I want to finish recording this video today and maybe get started on a little bit of editing in the afternoon. So those are very simple, like, micro goals, and then it helps me to feel more successful. It's a form of micro validation to achieve my own goal, even if it's a small goal. But number 2, for why some women stay at the bottom in terms of social status, is they have Black fatigue when it comes to their own lives. Okay, so they're tired, they're fatigued based on their own Black experience. They had a bad Black experience, that's why they hate their Blackness, because they had a bad experience with their Blackness. I don't have Black fatigue with my own Blackness. That's why I went to an HBCU. That's why I enjoy being in Black spaces sometimes. I like being in non-Black spaces too, but I still include Blackness as a part of my social routine, because I don't have that fatigue. But women who feel like they're at the bottom, they have a version of self-fatigue. They are fatigued by their own family, by their own blackness, by their own hair texture, by their own facial features, by their own body type, by their own teeth, by their own acne. So they got all these different little teeny tiny micro insecurities that have all built up into what I call an inferiority complex. An inferiority complex is a combination of dozens, if not hundreds, of micro insecurities that have built up over the decades to the point where now this woman is lost in her own insecurities. She doesn't even know where this self-hatred began. She doesn't know where all of this stuff started. All she knows is that she's mad and she's filled with rage. If you're filled with rage, that's definitely a sign that you've got some sort of very severe PTSD, self-hatred issues for sure if you're suffering with rage. Because rage is really a reaction to feeling like you're at the bottom. That's what that is. So women with anger issues, these are women who feel unheard, they feel unseen. Have you ever been around someone where they get mad and they start throwing stuff, they start screaming and shouting, they start breaking things? You know, these are the people where they stalk you, they chase you, they become fixated on you, they become obsessed with you. That person is struggling with rage. For these types of people, status is a form of survival. So remember, they're still in PTSD mode. They're still in fight or flight mode. They're still just trying to survive day to day. They're not in a growth mindset. They're just trying to live. So social status for this person, it's not about vanity. It's just they need to actually survive. So when they feel chronically low status or they feel chronically invisible, they feel like they're chronically at the bottom, their nervous system is reading that as, oh, I'm in danger. I'm in social danger. So that's what causes some women to become naturally defensive. Have you ever met a woman who's defensive? She's argumentative for no reason. Just wants to argue. Have you ever been around a man, actually, who wants to randomly argue with every beautiful woman? I know that I've dealt with that, like at work before. I remember one time I was brand new at this job, and there was this random white guy. And I noticed when I sent out an email, he was normal with everyone else. But then when I sent an email, he responded with a super rude email, just extremely rude. He CC'd everybody. And it was to the point where I literally got upset. And my manager walked in because she was so shocked at his email and how disrespectful he was. And even I was like, yeah, that email was rude as fuck. Like I said that at work. Yes, I said the word fuck at work to my boss. No, I don't care. But he had basically this sense of natural rage where he just wanted to argue with me because he was attracted to me, which I didn't know until later. So basically what happened with that guy was time went on. I ignored his email and I just kept like being myself. And then later on, he notices how nice of a person I actually am. And then it turns out this guy is attracted to me. This guy is attracted to me. It was the guy that I talked about a while back. This is a couple years ago. He was the one who kept showing up to my office every day. He was trying to take his breaks in the break room across from my office. He was always walking in. His job was not that related to my job at all. So there was no need for him to be in my part of the office. But that was an example of a man who felt rage in the presence of a woman he was attracted to. So people who have rage, they may not have it all the time. They're not enraged at everybody. Some people only get enraged around their rivals. So they're mad at women who are pretty, or they're mad at white people. They're mad at light-skinned people. They're mad at rich people. They're mad at Republicans, Democrats, etc. So that's a sign of somebody who felt chronically low status. And so the way that they try to assert their status is by expressing their rage. So that's where you get the snippy emails from the women at your job. Notice how the women who are sending these snarky emails, they're always women who are not pretty privileged. They don't have financial privilege. They never moved up in the company. Oftentimes it's somebody that's been making $10 an hour for the past 50 years. These are people who are leveled down. So being leveled down, that's where you get the people who have all this rage. Or like I said, the women who want to randomly fight you when you didn't do anything. Like you didn't do anything violent or threatening, but they naturally, their nervous system is in a state of severe PTSD, fight or flight. So that's why we saw that video a couple years ago. I did a video on that woman who just walked into the beauty supply store. She was like a pretty mixed woman, And then she randomly got cussed out just from walking in the store. She didn't do anything threatening to anybody, but the woman started screaming at her and berating her and threatening her, all because that woman felt chronically low status. So that woman was threatened by a woman that she considered to be high status. Also, another thing that women at the bottom do is scapegoating. So they're struggling with their own failures. They're struggling with their own dustiness. And so they try to project onto higher status men, or they project onto you as a higher status woman. And they'll say things like, oh, she thinks she's better than me. Oh, well, she doesn't deserve that platform that she has. Well, she doesn't deserve the attention she's getting. She's not even that pretty. Her hair is not even real. She can't wear red lipstick. She's too dark for that. So they're using you as a scapegoat because they're struggling with their own failure. They don't feel seen. They feel unseen, and so they want you to be unseen as well. Another phenomenon I see with women who feel like they're at the bottom, or men who feel like they're at the bottom, is the tendency to obsess and harass people a lot. So these are the people where they create fake accounts. They leave all these bad comments, all these nasty comments on your social media, or they're more harassing in nature. Maybe they keep calling you, they keep texting you, they keep sending mean things to you. People who do stuff like that, those people have a lot of unresolved trauma. Those people have a history of neglect. And they also have a history of humiliation. That's why they try to humiliate you. Have you ever been around someone that gets pleasure out of humiliating others? It's because somebody else got pleasure out of humiliating them. It's because they've been humiliated by society. They've been humiliated by their parents or by their exes, or, he's been humiliated by beautiful women in his past. That's why he's trying to humiliate you as a random beautiful woman who just happens to work at the office. Another thing that causes some women to stay at the bottom in terms of social status is the fear of being a token. Have you ever noticed that one of the main talking points that is given to women who feel like they're at the bottom, they'll say things like, well, you don't really belong. They don't really like you. You're just a sidekick. You're just a token. So this fear of being a token, it actually causes a fear of leveling up, because anytime you're breaking barriers, you are by far going to be a token. I mean, you're going to be a token in one way or another. Like in my case, there were no channels with the name Exotical on them. There were no channels when I first started that were supporting women who looked like me, or at least not that I saw. So I was a token in a way. I'm a token entrepreneur, like in real life. I don't know of anybody else who does content creation full time, and they basically get paid to talk shit. So I'm technically a token. So this fear of being a token is, in reality, it's actually the fear of breaking barriers. That's why you see a lot of women who feel like they're at the bottom. They experience a glass ceiling because they feel like, if I go any higher than this, then I'll be a token. Then I'll be the only person of color. Then I'll be the only woman. Then I'll be the youngest person in the office. So they have a fear of breaking barriers. And that's why you see people where they kind of click up. They only want to stay with people who are just like them. Number 5 is depending on a man as a financial plan and misunderstanding content creators like Shira 7. Okay, so that's a really big thing that keeps women at the bottom. They're waiting for this invisible billionaire to come and save them from their financial woes. They're waiting for this invisible man to come and fix their credit or to come and buy them a property. And I'm not saying that stuff is impossible. I'm not saying it can't happen. In fact, some of this stuff has happened to me before. So I'm not saying that a guy can't help you financially, but you don't want to just wait around for a man that may or may not exist, because you could find yourself waiting for a long time. So I see a lot of women saying things like, oh, well, I'm just going to get all these surgeries. I'm just going to get a BBL and a tummy tuck, and I'm going to get a lipo, and then I'm going to attract a billionaire, and then he's going to help me. He's going to move me out of this city. And it's like, okay, why are you waiting for a man to move you out of the city? Just move yourself. So it kind of creates this delay. It causes them to move slower. They're slower to make changes. They're slower to make really big, risky moves. They're afraid to take risks by themselves because they feel like there's no man to catch them when they fall. And I've noticed that women who come from broken families tend to be more likely to do this. These are women who they don't have a mother or sister or father or brother that they can call. So I notice sometimes it's almost like this, it's almost like she's lonely and isolated, and she has limerence over men. She has limerence over wealthy men. And so she feels like this Prince Charming is supposed to come and save her. She's almost like this Cinderella character in her own life where she's just walking around, living in this dusty apartment, sweeping floors, and she's hoping that the rich man or the king, she's waiting for her white savior to come and change her life. So my problem with that is that you're basically making a man the key to your success, which I don't agree with. And they're getting their talking points from women like Shira Seven, but they're picking and choosing what to follow off of her channel, because even Shira Seven has said several times she is not a romance channel. She is not a dating channel. She says that she is a financial channel. She's trying to teach women financial independence. She has talked dozens of times, if not hundreds of times, about how she herself is a business owner. Her YouTube is a business. She has a book. She even told her followers several times to start an Etsy shop. She's got, I don't know how many subscribers. I haven't seen a bunch of new Etsy shops popping up. So her subscribers, they're disobeying her instructions. They're disobeying what she said. She said, start your own Etsy shop, start your own, write a book, sell a digital product. And people are not listening, and they're just latching on, because they're so male-centered, that they're latching on to the man part. And I talked about this before. I believe that decentering men exists on a spectrum, just like everything else, because relationships are a social construct. This is a sociology channel, so I specialize in social constructs. So I've noticed there are some creators where they feel like there's only one way to decenter men. I don't agree with that. I feel like there are many different ways to decenter men. I feel like hypergamy is the very first step, because you're already eliminating 90% of men from your dating pool. You're cutting your casual sex in half or eliminating it completely. So that's a form of decentering men. So it may not be the same as women who are completely celibate or women who never date. It's not the same type of decentering men, but it's still a part of that spectrum. So what I see from women who they struggle with being at the bottom, part of why they're at the bottom is because they were waiting for an invisible Prince Charming to come and level them up. They externalized their level up. They're waiting for a man to save them from themselves. So it's like, okay, you fucked up your credit, you were bad at your job, you got fired 5 times, or you couldn't keep up with the car payments, your shit got repoed, and now you're waiting for some invisible Jeff Bezos #2 to come and save you and just fix all of your financial problems. That is an unrealistic expectation. And also, people don't realize how much your mental health and finances are correlated, because usually women with no savings account, they have no credit or bad credit, no business skills. A lot of women like that are very mentally ill, or maybe they have untreated ADHD or untreated symptoms. They don't even know how to think properly. They don't know how to think properly. They don't even know how to manifest money. And they expect to manifest a billionaire man? That doesn't even make sense. That does not make sense. You don't know how to manifest $500 to come up with your car note, but you expect to manifest a billionaire man. Do you see the delusion in that talking point? So that's why I say that some of those women, they stay at the bottom as well, because it's like a form of insanity. They're looking for a different result. You can't just continue to be a hood booger with a hood booger mindset. Ratchet ass car, ratchet ass life, ratchet ass bank account, everything's auto withdrawing and it's making you go negative over and over. You got late fees coming up every single week. You don't know when what bill is coming out. You try to hurry up and run to the ATM so you can withdraw money so that it doesn't get taken out of your bank account. All of that, that's hood shit. That's some hood shit. So that's another lifestyle of women who are living at the bottom. She's at the bottom of the financial totem pole. So instead of seeking a man or seeking a romantic relationship, oh, by the way, that's codependency. So instead of seeking to become financially codependent on a man, why don't I figure out some basic life skills? Because remember, that man, even if you do meet a Jeff Bezos tomorrow, let's say Jeff Bezos comes to the local McDonald's that you work at in the ghetto, and then he sweeps you off your feet. Okay, fine. Even if you were with Jeff Bezos for 5 years, as soon as he drops you or dumps you, or cheats and you dump him, now you're back at square one. So that's another thing that keeps women at the bottom. They want to change their outside circumstances without changing their internal mindset. And that's why you have women like Shira Seven trying to warn you and saying, hey, wait, no, you should still have your own business and also make sure he's investing in you. You know, you don't want to be begging for coins. It's basically like being a beggar, but in a different way. Beggars can't be choosers. And also, women who are beggars, those are women who are at the bottom. They feel like they're at the bottom. They're begging for white male validation, begging for money from a man, begging for the dating app algorithms to change so that they can be shown in front of more men, begging to get into these clubs and bars and lounges and country clubs and all these expensive gyms and all that so they can be around these men. That's more of a lifestyle of someone who she doesn't know how to manifest her own dreams. She doesn't know how to manifest that for herself. And so she wants a man to manifest the soft life for her. That's another symptom of women who feel like they're at the bottom. And then they blame random content creators when the content creator never said that. If you go and look at people's content, like Shira, she never said, oh, just be a hood booger and just wait around and hope that a man comes and like gives you money. No, you're not supposed to put your life on pause in hopes that a man will come around. So what I see is a lot of women are staying at these miserable jobs or they're living kind of this bare minimum lifestyle financially. And also it's like, okay, if you're living a dusty lifestyle and you look dusty, you look like a dusty ass woman, then it's hard for me to believe that you're going to attract this high quality man and live this high quality lifestyle. I just don't believe it. Okay, I think I'm on number 8. Fear of being envied. Okay, that's another thing that keeps women at the bottom. They're scared of jealous women. They're scared of women gunning for them, if that makes sense. So I talked about this before. A lot of pretty women, we face this fear usually in childhood or around puberty. We naturally go through this. This is a part of our coming of age story because a lot of us have naturally dealt with envy, whether it's from, it could be friends, it could be family members, it could be people at your jobs. But the women who are not so privileged, they never had that target on their back before. So they don't know what it's like to constantly have a target on their back. But if you're already pretty privileged, you already were born with a target on your back from both men and women. But a lot of women have the fear of being envied. They're scared of people's opinions. They're scared of people talking shit. They're scared of people saying you're too dark to wear red lipstick. They're scared of people being colorist against them. They're scared of people envying them and rivaling them. They're afraid of people trying to compete with them. And also for some women, it's a safety issue. So again, it's a PTSD type of response. So they're afraid for their own safety. And it's like anytime that you gain social status, it's automatically going to threaten your safety. I told you guys, I've received unaliving threats on this YouTube channel since I first started. Like before I even reached 1,000 subscribers, I was already receiving threats via my email that people were going to unalive me. If you look at people right now, they're attempting to dox me. They're attempting to figure out where I live, where I hang out. Go look at Lipstick Alley and you'll see people trying to figure out who I am, where do I hang out, trying to find me or whatever, figure out who my exes are and all that. So all of that that's pathological envy. That's fixation. That's obsession. So it's understandable that a lot of women would be scared because, that's dangerous. But women who have a fear of being envied, if you're so scared of some dusty women envying you, then you'll never elevate. And part of this too comes from women who did not grow up with protection. So that goes back to daddy issues. Maybe they didn't have a protective father. They didn't live in a safe space. They lived in an area growing up where people are getting unalived outside or, so that's a very real fear to them. So in order to remain safe, they have to remain basic. But a part of the whole leveling up journey is you have to overcome that fear of being envied. So like in my case, part of how I overcame it was, number 1, I got to up my Karen skills. Yeah, that's right. I'm a proud Karen whenever I need to be. I love calling the police. I just called the police actually. Well, I called the police and then I also contacted the fire department and I also contacted the manager of my building. This week, I'm probably going to contact corporate and send them an email as well. So developing Karen skills, developing self-preservation skills, that helps to overcome the fear of being envied. The girls who are scared of jealous women, they don't have self-preservation skills. That's why they're scared, because they feel like, oh, these jealous women are going to succeed in sabotaging me. So they're afraid of smear campaigns. They're afraid of people talking shit. I get a lot of comments from you guys asking me like, "Oh, Exoticals United, are you okay? Or are you safe? Like, I saw people were being vicious against you. I see that people are really hating on you, and I appreciate your concern." But yeah, that's just a part of leveling up. That's a part of having visibility. The more visibility you have, the more criticism you're going to also have. The faster you rise, the stronger the criticism is going to be. Look at Tyla. Tyla, she wasn't able to fly under the radar. You know what I mean? She grew too fast. She shot into superstardom. It seems like she came out of nowhere. So that's why you have people attacking her. And this is also why I say that being like a pretty girl, it's basically kind of like a form of being a celebrity. It's like a being a celebrity on a small scale because you have people envying you, they're starting rumors about you, but they also admire you, and then they're also fixated on you, then they're also obsessed with you, and then they also want to dress like you, and then they want to look like you as well, and then they want to see who you're sleeping with. Okay, that's how you treat celebrities. Then they want to take pictures of you without your consent. They want to stalk your Instagram, your Facebook. They want to stalk your stories. That's how they treat celebrities. So for some women, they will never become high status because being high status, that's similar to being a celebrity. You know, it's you're very visible. Your privacy does get invaded, so you have to go through more measures of self-preservation. So this is why you see a lot of rich people living in gated communities. They don't live amongst the ghettos. They don't live in the ghetto. They go and live amongst other high status people. They live in an area where they have gates and security, and you can't get in unless they buzz you in. So they have to kind of isolate themselves from potential envious, jealous people who want to come in and try to take stuff from them. But women who are at the bottom, they don't understand that, or they're too scared, or they just feel overwhelmed. Like, I don't want to have to move. I don't want to have to make new friends. I don't want to have to transfer schools. I don't want to have to get a new job. I actually came across a lot of women like that at some of my old jobs where it's like they didn't want to have to go through the application process and the interview process for a new job. So they kind of felt like, I'd rather deal with a monster where I know what it's like. I'd rather suffer and at least I can predict what the suffering will be at this job versus a new job where I don't know what it is. But the problem with that, though, is that's the fear of the unknown. They're afraid that, new levels, new devils, you know how they say that? They're afraid of that. They're afraid of the new devils that come with new levels. So that's why they never go up a level, because they don't want to deal with higher level viciousness, which is fair. I mean, everybody can't make it to the top. So, hey, if you want to stay at the bottom, I get it. Everybody can't be at the top. Everybody can't go where I'm going. Everybody doesn't get to be that bitch. Everybody can't be that girl. Everyone can't be a part of the Pretty Girl Club. So I get it. Number 9 is financial mismanagement. So have you ever been around a woman where she spends $1,500 on a lace front, but she can't move to a place with $1,500 rent? She spends hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on her nails every couple of months. Think about getting your nails done, nails and toes. Maybe you get acrylics and you get the nail art and you get all the gems and stuff. What is that? A good $250 for your hands and feet? So $250 a month, that's over $1,000 just in a few months. With that $1,000, she could have started a business. She could have paid for a semester of school or a class or a certification. But some women, they invest their finances in the wrong places. That's what I'm trying to say. So these are the women who, maybe they spent all their money on weed. They spent all their money on freaking, I don't know, just stuff that they don't need. Stupid shit. And then at the end of the month, they're like, oh my God, where'd my money go? Or, oh my gosh, I can't go on the vacation. I can't go to school. I can't afford it. So the way to overcome that is by having priorities and then matching your finances with your priorities. So basically putting your money where your mouth is. So what's most important? For me personally, what's most important for me is the neighborhood that I live in. That's extremely important. I need to live in the nicest part of town. I need to live in the center of the city, right where I have access to everything. I need to live in a walkable area. That's my number one priority. And I don't care how much it costs. If my rent were to double, if everybody's rent were to double tomorrow, you know what I would do? Come up with a way to get that money, because I'm not moving to the hood. So that's my priority, is to live in an upscale type of area, or to live amongst people that are upwardly mobile. But the women who mismanage their finances and they stay at the bottom, again, they're living day to day. They don't plan their shit ahead of time. They're not meal prepping. So that's why they're spending all their money at Jack in the Box. They're spending all their money at Cane's. They're spending their money at KFC and Popeyes. And then when they look at their monthly statements, if they even do that, then they see, oh my God, I spent $200 at In-N-Out. I could have got my hair done. Like a lot of the women who prioritize beauty, but then they won't admit it. They prioritize beauty, but then they look dusty and crusty. It's like they just didn't put their money where their mouth is. In a lot of cases, they're not ugly. They're just broke. They mismanage their finances. They didn't spend the money to get a personal trainer. They didn't spend the money to get a nutritionist. If you're fat and you don't know what to eat, get a nutritionist. Just do one nutritionist appointment. Instead of spending $200 on all of those Jack in the Box meals, you could just get one doctor's appointment to fix that PCOS or get whatever prescription. Just go to one nutritionist appointment. By the way, in my Patreon, I was talking about how I got a couple of nutritionist appointments. I was kind of sharing what the nutritionist shared with me. And I'm so glad that I talked to her and everything because, she really helped me to strategize on what to buy. She helped me to create a grocery list based on my personal preferences and symptoms and based on how much cravings I have and what time of day I have the cravings. She helped me come up with a whole strategy. So women who mismanage their finances, they're not good at strategically investing their money. They're just spending their money. They're not investing in it. I try to always be purchasing books. Every few months, I may purchase a professional course of some sort. So that might be going to a nutritionist. It may be some sort of social media course. It could be something that helps me become better at my job. There are so many things that I've done to try to help myself level up. It could be if you have an online business, you can pay someone to create your YouTube banner. You can pay someone to make your thumbnails or someone that makes your intros, your outros, all that fancy stuff that you see from other people. You can pay somebody to do that. But the women who are at the bottom, they don't know how to use their money to level up. So that's why they don't have a savings. If you do not have any sort of savings account, that is financial mismanagement. I said what I said. Every time I get some money, I try to put something in the savings, even if it's $5. There have been times where I just put $5 in my savings, just $5, or maybe even $1, because that's all I could give at the time. But then, as the months go on, I'm like, oh, wow, I have $500. Oh, wow, I have $4,000. So that's a form of me trying to use my finances to help me level up. So the women who are at the bottom, when I say at the bottom, I'm not just talking about in terms of beauty or looks, even though your money does affect your beauty, by the way. There's a reason why when you go to the rich area, the women tend to look more polished. So it's not that you're not pretty, it's that you're not polished. Maybe you didn't spend the money to go to the dentist. You didn't spend the money to get your teeth cleaned, so now they're looking yellow. And then there's this other girl where her teeth are perfectly white. It's because she chose to strategically invest in something that benefits her. I think I'm on number 9. They don't know how to privilege stack because they were not raised by privileged family members, or they were raised in an underprivileged environment. So if you're an exotical, you automatically have been in proximity to privilege. So whether your mom was privileged, dad was privileged, grandma, cousins, sister, entire family, you were raised at least partially in some sort of privileged environment. So that's why they say, oh, she has a superiority complex. So if I just told you that an inferiority complex is dozens, if not hundreds of micro insecurities, that means that a superiority complex is dozens, if not hundreds of positive affirmations and positive beliefs about yourself. Oh, my skin tone makes me pretty. Being mixed makes me cute. Being skinny makes me cute. Having a big booty or having a little booty makes me cute. So women that they accuse of having superiority complexes, when you ask them, hey, how do you know that she thinks she's superior? What they're going to do is they begin to describe her simply being confident. They'll be like, oh, she thinks she's better because she walked in here and she just started talking and soaking up all the attention. She thinks she's better because she's always dressing up. She's always overdressing. She's just trying to draw attention to herself. Okay, that just sounds like confidence. That just sounds like, she wants to dress cute. She owns her space. She takes up space. She's unapologetic. It's funny how whenever you are unapologetic, people start accusing you of thinking you're superior. Also, if somebody does think they're superior to me, that really is none of my business. Who cares? Why would I waste my time thinking about some random white girl who might think she's better than me, or some random Latina girl who might think she's better? How does that help me? It doesn't. So there's no point in me even focusing on that. But the women who are at the bottom, they don't know how to privilege stack. They weren't raised around privilege. All they know is struggle. They came from struggle. Maybe their parents had struggle love, and so did their grandparents and uncles and cousins. Maybe they came from poverty, an impoverished background. Maybe they have a phenotype where the members of that phenotype feel like they are underprivileged. So whatever their cultural background is, there is a such thing as victim culture. So some people, they come from more of a victim culture, whereas other people, they come from an empowered cultural background. This is why you're never really going to hear me tell people to abandon their spiritualities and stuff, because sometimes people's spiritual beliefs actually help them to feel empowered. It helps them to feel privileged. The fact that they have this spiritual knowledge or whatever. So even if I may not agree with it, if it helps them, that's a part of why you have so many people who go to church, or they have those crystals or whatever, or they do the little meditations and all that. It's because that makes them feel empowered. But the women who are at the bottom, they don't have any sources of empowerment. So remember how I talked about micro validation? What about micro empowerment? I just made that up. Like having these small sources of things that make you feel powerful, whatever it is. It could be the most silly thing. So like in my case, looking polished, that makes me feel a sense of power. Having my teeth done, like brushing my teeth, flossing. I'm obsessed with brushing my teeth, flossing, doing the little teeth whitening gels. Just kind of like any small details that make me look very polished and put together. Doing a nice body scrub, getting rid of like dead skin on my elbows and knees, for example. That is like a source of micro empowerment. Making sure my booty looks good. I know that's really random. No, I'm not sleeping with anyone. No, I'm not taking pictures of my butt. It's literally just for me. So looking in the mirror and seeing that my butt looks perfectly smooth and like my skin looks perfect, that is a source of micro empowerment. Seeing the improvements over time, having a really cute, sexy pair of like underwear with like a matching bra or like a matching t-shirt and underwear. You can get that on like Fashion Nova and stuff. Having a beautiful pajama set, that's a form of micro empowerment for me. I feel empowered. Oh, having a clean apartment, that's another one. It makes me feel a sense of power because it's like, wow, I am winning in life. I really do feel like I have my shit together. When my apartment is together, I feel like I have my shit together, because if somebody randomly comes over, then it's like I don't feel embarrassed. I don't feel like, oh, sorry, you can't come in here because, it's too dirty, or, oh, sorry, I have all these dishes in the sink and it like smells bad and everything. No. So it's like a source of micro empowerment. Gaining a new skill is another source of micro empowerment to me, because I can use that skill forever. So it could be a new hobby, learning how to ride a bike, how to ride a horse, how to ride a motorcycle, learning how to ride a unicycle, learning how to juggle, all these random little hobbies. Those are like micro sources of empowerment for me, because it makes me feel more confident in my multifaceted identity. So you guys know that for me, that's a really big deal to me. I have a very fluid identity, a very fluid standard of beauty. I like to socialize in a whole bunch of different spaces. So having all of these hobbies and random skills or talents, that makes me feel a micro version of empowerment. Building your talents, that's a big one. Can you sing? Can you dance? Can you speak another language? Can you like do something and then you can impress people if you wanted to? That's a source of power. A lot of people do stuff like that because they want to be able to go to karaoke night and then they can slay and they can hit all the Whitney Houston notes and they can like, it's like it makes them feel powerful in that moment. It makes them feel seen. But women at the bottom, they don't know how to do that because maybe they weren't raised in that sort of background. Maybe their femininity was discouraged. Their sense of self-exploration, that was discouraged by their family members. So they never got to explore how far they can go. I love exploring myself. I love seeing, like, I love pushing myself to the limits and kind of seeing how far I can go with certain things. That's how this YouTube channel became a thing. I told you guys when I first started this, I did not think that I would pass 500 subscribers, but I was like, hey, let me just see. Hopefully I have a small community where I can talk to people back and forth. That was it. I was definitely not thinking of it like, oh, I'm going to become a full-time YouTube. That's laughable. I would have laughed. In fact, I actually remember laughing when an ex told me that I should consider doing YouTube full-time. I remember laughing at him like, oh no, I'm trying to be an accountant. So women who are at the bottom, they're never stretching themselves. They're never pushing their limits because they have a deep-seated fear of failure. But I think I'm on number 10, femcel mindset. That's another thing that keeps some women at the bottom. So a femcel mindset is you are in starvation mode when it comes to male validation. And it's not just male validation, it's more so the men that you want, the men that you're attracted to. The reason why some women are watching this content where it's like how to attract white men, how to get approached, they're watching it because they don't get approached. They don't attract white men. That's why the majority of them are watching it. It's because they need help, basically. And there's nothing wrong with needing help, but the femcel mindset, that's a very detrimental type of mindset. Those are the women where they have the same behavior as the incels. So these women, they argue back and forth with attractive men that they're attracted to. They argue back and forth because they're trying to get that man's attention, or they want to make him feel anxious. So I talked about this in the Patreon, how there was this girl that I knew, and she literally started an altercation. She started an altercation at a restaurant with a tall, buff, black guy. And guess what she started the altercation over? She was talking about divestment and how she only dates white men. By the way, nobody was talking about dating. Nobody was talking about white men. I was standing right there. They were literally talking about other topics. But she became so triggered by this man's presence and his attractiveness or whatever. The way that she handled her attraction to him was by trying to fight with him. Also, I feel like black media, if you grew up watching a lot of black movies like Deliver Us from Eva, and I just saw one today called A Thin Line Between Love and Hate. It just popped up on my YouTube. I've never seen that, but just by the title, I was like, okay, that's exactly what I'm talking about in the black community. This toxic mindset where gender dynamics are basically, it's this enemies to lovers storyline where, the way you get a man is by being his enemy first. The way that you get a man's attention is by being his enemy first. So that's no different than the incel men who try to nag you and say you're a 6 out of 10. You're an adjustable 6. Do you like it when men nag you and try to bring you down in order for you to date them? No. So why would you think that that is a valid way to get male attention, especially if you're a hypergamous girl who's like, oh, I want a guy to invest in my business and stuff. Why would somebody invest in your business if you just called him ugly and fat and bald or whatever? So that's another disadvantage that women have who feel like they're at the bottom. They have been brainwashed by toxic black love media. If they grew up monoculturally black, for example, or it could be any culture really that has toxic love stories. Like if you grew up watching toxic love stories, that includes Disney Channel. Disney Channel has a lot of toxic love stories. Disney Channel is more like the great white savior type of toxic love. And then the black version is more like this enemies to lovers mindset. Kind of like two can play that game where it's like, oh, well, he's actually a cheater. And then let me try to emotionally dysregulate him. And then in the end, I'm still going to take him back. And then we live happily ever after. Oh, wait, but then in the next movie, turns out he didn't want to put a ring on it anyway. So it's like you're going through all of this back and forth, trying to play all these psychological games, exhausting yourself, spying on a man, trying to figure him out, trying to decode him. He's doing the same thing to you. You're letting him trigger you. That is a toxic love dynamic. That comes from the femcel mindset, okay? So this is a woman who, she doesn't have any actual male counterparts in her life. So, for example, no father, no brothers that she gets along with, no male cousins, no male coworkers, friends, even LGBT. I mean, just completely socially isolated. And so she's kind of left to figure things out based on observing. So she observes like the media because she doesn't go outside or touch grass. So all she does is sit in her house and watch all these movies such as Deliver Us from Eva or It's a Thin Line Between Love and Hate or there was one called Booty Call, I think. Like somebody told me about, and there's another one. I think it's called like Pootie Tang or something. I don't know all the names of the movies, but like just judging based on the names and based on the thumbnails of the movie, I'm like, okay, I already know that that is some sort of fetishizing, objectifying, or enemies to lovers story time. So, what are the cultural narratives in your community when it comes to love or when it comes to male and female interactions? You know, because all of that plays into that femcel mindset that we see from women of certain cultures. Even like being fat, that's a culture in and of itself as well. So there's also an entire inferiority complex that comes with being obese. Because look at the women on TikTok who are obese. What is their storyline? Oh, nobody likes me. Nobody loves me. I have the worst part of the dating algorithm. I get treated like trash. You know, I'm treated like shit. And so now I just go home and binge and eat my feelings. Okay, that's another example of a toxic femcel type of mindset. So the way that you kind of overcome this femcel mindset is number one, you want to have positive sources of micro validation from men. And it doesn't have to be romantic. This could be healing your relationship with your father. This could be healing your relationship with your inner child, the masculine side of your inner child, because everybody has kind of like this feminine side and kind of this masculine side. I talk more about that in the Patreon. But yeah, that's another way that you can kind of overcome that femcel mindset. Another thing you can do is, decenter men. Maybe stop putting them on such a high pedestal. Maybe stop thinking of them as these magical, mythical creatures. Stop objectifying men. That's another thing. Women who watch shows like Bridgerton, Scandal, Grey's Anatomy, all of these all of these Netflix shows and stuff, they're actually objectifying not just women, but men. So objectification of men, that's a part of the femcel mindset. Just like how incels objectify women. They're corn addicts, right? So watching a whole bunch of romance, like unrealistic or toxic love and romance movies, like Twilight is another good example. That's promoting the objectification of men. Some of them promote the deification of men, kind of like male worship. You know how they talk about black male worship? Well, yeah, some of them are black male worshiping movies. Some of them are white male worshiping in the case of Disney Channel, or they're rich male worshiping, or they watch all of this content that puts romantic relationships on a pedestal. So that's what makes women feel this rage when they don't have a romantic relationship. Remember how I showed that video of this woman? She actually happened to be an overweight woman and she had never been kissed. She never had a first kiss. And she was like, I want a lips. And she was screaming at the camera, I want lips. Saying that basically she was desperate for a man's lips to touch hers. Like that's how desperate she was. To the point where she was screaming in the car at her phone and actually posted this on social media. So that's an example of more of a femcel mindset. And that leads me to number 11, which is validation starvation. So they don't have any sources of healthy male validation, micro validation. I'm not telling you to center men. I'm not telling you to go fuck random men. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about micro validation. Okay, so this is at the acquaintance level. This can be at a distance. This could be with family members. It doesn't have to be romantic. Studying the psychology behind like men and what they're going through as well, that also helps. Like that was a tremendous help for me on my decentering men journey. Just kind of studying like, okay, what's it actually like? Kind of putting myself in their shoes. What's it actually like to be a man in America? You know, how would I feel and what kind of pressures would I be facing? You know, so thinking about how remember, men are human beings just like you. So women who have this femcel mindset, they're validation starved, they dehumanize men. They think that men are these walking demigods who have no feelings and no emotions. You know, that's a femcel mindset. Anyone who tells you that men can't feel anything whatsoever, that not only is that inaccurate, that's inaccurate. Human beings as a whole can feel emotions. We see men feeling emotions all the time, especially rage, anger. A lot of men feel extremely rejected, not just by women, but in society as a whole. Don't even get me started on if he's a man of color or if comes from an immigrant background. He's a first generation college student. So men have their own issues that they have to overcome. So a part of what causes the femcel mindset is not being able to see relatability with men as humans. And that's part of why you're kind of centering them, is because you're dehumanizing them. You're making it like they're these gods or they're these natural protectors and providers when we know that that is statistically not true. So women who are at the bottom, part of their issues that they have with men, it has to do with self-hatred, social anxiety, and isolation. Because remember, going back to the PTSD thing, if she feels like all men are colorist, or all black men are colorist, or all white men are racist, or whatever, if she has all of these limiting beliefs around men, she's probably not going to interact well with men as a whole. So I'm not even talking about romantically. I mean, in the workplace is a good example. Maybe she gets a new job and her coworker happens to be black, or her coworker is a white guy, and maybe she has PTSD from white men. So now she's over here being triggered by this man's presence. This man is over here living in her head rent free. Do you see what I mean about how that keeps women at the bottom? Because now that man is serving as a distraction. He's now distracting you. Now you're not thinking about your work, your job, your level up. You're thinking about Scott. You're thinking about, oh, was Scott looking at me funny? Was he staring at my hair? Does he think my hair is fake? Is he racist? Does he like black women? Does he date black women? What does his girlfriend look like? Do you see that spiral? Yeah, that keeps women at the bottom. Anyway, what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time.